Okay, welcome Hannah Gallagher, Mrs. Hannah Gallagher, I should say.
Thank you. Just because you came to the wedding, Pat.
Yeah, of the century, obviously. So, thank you so much for giving up your time to talk to us about your journey through rugby as a lady and the girls' rugby. My unicorns, or our unicorns, are just dipping their toe into it. So they've got lots to take in, lots of questions to ask. But I'd ask you if you could just start off by how you got yourself started.
Yeah, so I mean, everyone obviously has a way into rugby. I was standard little girl, so my mum tried to get me into horse riding and into ballet, things like that. Obviously, as I'm built very much like a rugby player, so that didn't go down very well at all. At the age of about 5, I started karate, so I was particularly good at that, and then became one of those awful little sisters that was just really competitive. I had an older brother who played rugby, and my dad coached rugby. So from the age of about 7 or 8, started rugby. I was the only girl, so I played with all the boys in minis all the way through until I was 12 years old, which I like to think toughened me up a bit, and it made me earn the respect of the boys, because obviously when you're about 8 years old, girls are rubbish, girls can't do anything. So that really helped develop my rugby. So yeah, I started then. I was a scrum half at the time, so I was a 9. If you guys have positions, I think you should have around this time. So I started out in that position, and then I made the transition. So I stayed with the same club. So I started at Bishop Stortford, and I stayed at Bishop Stortford and played with the women's for my first season there. And in those days, it was, instead of, because you guys are under 14, so as soon as you went from under 12s, we went into, I think it was under 18s. So we had a huge group. So I was playing with people that are 18 years old, and I was 12 and a half, 13. So I learned very quickly with that. It was actually my transition from when I went from mini rugby, so playing with the boys, to playing into the girls, that I had one of my coaches say, like, I know that I'm going to see you in an England shirt one day. So that always really stuck with me. So from the age of about 12, all I wanted to do was play for England. And I was prepared to really put in the graft and do extra skills and look for the best clubs to play in to make sure that I made it at that level. And I started very young. Believe me, there are a lot of England girls that started off playing at university and things like that. So you guys are not old, but I was very fortunate that I started off very young. I went from Bishop Stortford, so I did 1 season there, and Welling Rugby Club, if you know Hertfordshire at all, were the best team in the county at the time. So I spent my next season, I went straight to Welling. So I was like, I'll stay at, they're the best club in Hart, so I'll play there until I can go to Saracens when I'm 18. So I did well at Welling. In that time, I worked my way up. So I played county, regional, and I got scouted at the age of about 13 or 14, and I got put into the talent development group. So if you've heard of it, the TDG, so it's the National Talent Development Group, where you have about 20 of the best players in the under 14s and under 17s in the country. So I went from 14, and I stayed in that group until I was 17, and then I got selected for England under 20s. However, I wasn't just a rugby player. I'm sure a lot of you guys play other sports. We're hoping you do. So in school, I played every sport possible. So I played football, even though I've got 2 left feet, but I can boot it really far. And if people run into you, they generally tend to fall over. Netball, really, really good for your agility and hand-eye coordination. So if you guys play netball, I definitely keep up with sports like that. Hockey, again, played loads and loads of that. So I played all of it, did all the athletics, and doing it at your age is really good because it makes you an all-round athlete. And it wasn't until I got into England under 20s when I was about 17 that I started to specialise in rugby, and I started to take down the other sports and just put all my time and effort into rugby, and then really specialise and hone in on what position I wanted to be and how I was going to make it from the under 20s into the elite. I then, at the age of, so I just turned, I was in, I'm trying to think what year that would be in, maybe year 11. So when you're in 17, 18 year at school. So I then went to Saracens. So as soon as I could basically play senior rugby, went straight to Saracens, trained with them at that point, and still to this day, we're the best club in the country, especially for women. So when you guys get older, if there's a club you would move to, I would definitely suggest Saracens, because they've got an awesome setup, and you'll definitely go far with that. So with that, within 3 games of playing for the twos, I was then moved into the ones. So I was an 18-year-old playing in the Premiership and playing under 20s. So I was 18, that's exactly where I wanted to be, but I was always thinking, where can I go next? So it's always never being complacent. Had a bit of a curveball where I was, if you guys know positions, I was a centre. So I'd gone from a scrum half to a centre when I was a centre when I was playing girls rugby, so around the age of 12. Got all the way through the national development group, got into England under 20s as a centre, had done pretty well. And then I got the head England coach, so the guy that works with the senior girls, came to an England under 20 session and was like, don't know what you're doing. Like, you're a great player, but you'll never make it in the elite as a centre. You need to go back row, which is the most highly competed position there is in England rugby. But I trusted him, and then I moved to back row, which meant that I couldn't get into the elite that year because I'd just changed position. So that was a real turning point of, like, so basically I'd trust your coach. If someone says, if you want to get further, you go this position. If you're able to do that, I would definitely take that opportunity, because me doing that, I played then 1 season with England under 20s. That was my second season. My second season with England under 20s. In that season, I scored 13 tries in 7 games. So I stood out in that position. I'd won every single game that we'd played with the under 20s, and then I went straight into the elite the next year. So I did 1 full season with the under 20s as a back row and went straight into the elite. So that was just hard graft of learning a whole new position, but knowing that if I did that and worked hard, I'd be fortunate enough to get into that elite team. So really fortunate with that. Then Pat, by the way, if you want to ask me any questions, I'm just kind of rambling.
No, I know. Well, let's just before you go into the more senior side of things. So the girls, again, you were fortunate enough to start at a young age. Now the girls are starting out on their journey at 12, 13 years old, and some of them have got a bit of rugby history in the family. Like Izzy, there, give us a wave, Izzy. So Izzy's older brother plays, the dad's referees, plays. So, similarly to yourself, so she knows the game. But the other girls are all, they're new to it. They've seen probably siblings play. How do we keep the girls motivated and sort of not talking positional, but, I know they really have a great time and they're great friends, but what's their driver on a rugby pitch?
I think the first thing is always making sure that, rugby's a team game. So if you're improving yourself, so if everyone on your team's improving, the team will improve. And it's kind of having that work ethic that where you're at in one season. So for example, if you played a league and you finished 5th, be like, we want to finish better next season. We want to finish better next season. And also having a personal driver. So mine was obviously very, very precise. And I was just one of those kids. So I was like, I want to play for England. I know that I'm going to get there because I'm going to go to Saracens and then I'll do this. And I know what pathway that I'm going to follow to do it. And was just very driven that way. And I was one of those kids where some kids are going out, like, I don't know, going down town park and drinking or doing what teenagers do, playing Fortnite or all that kind of stuff, TikTok, all the latest stuff. Like, I'm old now, I don't get it. But I would have been training from the age of 14. So I'd have been doing my homework and then being really boring and training or doing my skill stuff. But that got me where I needed to get very quickly. So I think rugby's awesome. It's social. I absolutely loved it for that and made lifelong friends from it. But I also think if you're good at it or if you're really driven, then think about, okay, well, where can we get to as a team? That's awesome. And when you get there, be like, where can we go from here? Can you also then personally do county? Can you personally do divisional? Can you get into setups that way? So these, like, the paths are very obvious. And if you need to ask people, like, always speak to Pat, because I can feed in how the paths keep changing. But Saracens, now we have a development pathway into the Saracens team that I personally coach for, and I pick who generally gets in. So we know roughly what you need to get into that. And we don't always take the most or the best rugby players. You take people with the most promise or the most talent. So if you're absolutely rapid, or if you're particularly strong, or things like that, and rugby is quite easy to transition into. So all you need to do is catch and pass, and you're halfway there. So if you're really quick, or you've got some really good physical, I mean, I couldn't even catch a pass half the time. So just some certain physical attributions, I definitely think if you enjoy it, then I'd work hard. And guys, you're all mates, you're going to have a great time with it. But also think personally, if you want to kind of progress on, like, how can you do it?
I think that's a really good point, which is made. The girls see the game being played by, sort of, say, the men, or on TV, so the ladies' game, and they're just starting out, so they see a certain level and they think, well, I'm not at that level yet. So there's a little bit of confidence in there. But saying that, having coached them since September, October, the level of progression's been amazing. And I know we spoke about this previously, Hannah, but girls are easier to coach. There's a lot of coachability, but they're easily disappointed as well if they don't reach the goal that they want. And I know what you're like, and you're a fighter, and you fight and fight and fight. But I want that the girls I know in my group have got that fight. It's just that how do they realise it themselves?
Yeah, so I think it's with everything. Like, I could play a game and I'd score a hat trick and I'd be outstanding, and I would still look at areas I didn't do well in. So I'm very negative. I'd be like, oh, but I missed a tackle or something like this. So, I mean, however you look at it, I think you should always strive to be better. But wherever, for example, if you guys trial for county and you didn't get it, like, yeah, it sucks, but you're going to get to go again. Like, I've had knockbacks. I've not been selected for teams and things like that, but that should always spur you on to get selected for the next game or for the next squad. And there's always going to be another chance till you get to my age and you get crippled. But you've got ages. I'm really old. But yeah, I mean, always have an aim, always have a goal, whether it's to do certain things in a match, like you're going to make all your tackles or score a try or things like that. And if it doesn't happen, doesn't matter. You'll have another game. You can work on it again. So I think it's always set yourself goals. If you hit it, that's great. And just keep reflecting on it, because you're only going to get better from it. And you're not going to be perfect to start with, but no one is. And you can watch any game you actually watch play. If you watch the seniors and the elite play, you can definitely comment on a lot of players on things they're doing wrong. So everyone's making mistakes. Everyone's doing things wrong. And I mean, especially with women's rugby, you fly through the coaching, because rugby is actually a really simple game. I mean, no one understands all the laws. I still didn't. I used to be like, that's ridiculous. Give me a yellow card for this. But yeah, I mean, the majority of it, if you can catch, pass, tackle, you're winning. The rest of it is just honing in on the skill. And if you can spend personal time or time together when you guys are not social distancing, working on that, you'll be absolutely flying.
Excellent. That's a really good point. So it's something, I try and reiterate, but I'm glad it's coming from someone who's been at the top level of the game. So there you go, girls. I'm not just making it up. Nod if you agree. Yeah, good. at least I'm getting there somehow. So I'll just throw in a few questions. So you started at Saracens and then you got picked for England under 20s. So what was the transition sort of from playing league rugby, Premiership rugby, to international rugby, and then following on to elite rugby?
If I'm completely honest, I would say that the Premiership is significantly harder than England under 20s. Right. Because in the Premiership, you're playing against other fully international and senior women. So I would definitely say that was harder. So I actually thought going into under 20s, I found easier, which is, I think, why I found it easier and perhaps performed better. Like, not all under 20s will be playing in the Premiership, whereas all Premiership players will be playing in the elite. So I definitely think that played in the Prem, and that's why I had such a big onus on, I'm going to the best Prem club and I will work my way up and try and get into the Premiership team there. So that was a massive thing for me, was to play for the best team, because under 20s was easy. And then when I made that transition from Premiership, my dog is about to go nuts. You know, you can hear him, like, if you start here barking, that's not me. Yeah, so when I went from, under 20s to elite, so from Premiership to elite is a big jump. That is like a whole other level. Like the hits are a lot harder. It's so much faster. It's a really, really fast game, especially when you play against the big teams. But yeah, from under 20s, I'd say it's not as bad. That was my experience. It might be harder these days.
So were you the ones giving the hard knocks, or were you receiving the hard knocks? Well, yeah. Well, playing back row, you would have been in the middle of everything.
Yeah, constantly got a lot of injuries. My nose is very wonky. Luckily, the lighting isn't too bad. But from that, yeah, definitely had my hands stamped on a lot from having my hands on the ball. But yeah, it's a great position.
Yeah, I loved it myself. Not to the level you played it. So moving into playing Premiership rugby, and then sort of the call up into sort of the senior elite England team. There was a question, sort of who was that? Izzy asked, were you scared, or was it scary when you played for the England team? I bet on day one it was.
Oh yeah, you know what? It's very much like you've got to earn your stripes. So you've got the old girls there that have been there for ages, and we're like, they used to call us puppies because we were like 18 years old. And yeah, you had to earn your stripes. And my first game was against France in the south of France, so which sounds really nice. It was November, and it was monsoon. It was absolutely torrential. One of our players looked like they were drowning in a puddle. Like one player literally caught the ball, and as she brought it up, threw it about 10 meters forward. So it was an absolute carnage game. We just won it, but I came on off the bench, so I probably got 10 minutes. So it's one of those games where it's not a memorable game. I wouldn't be like, oh, my first cap was incredible. But yeah, it had to get done, and I didn't play particularly well. No one did. No one could really catch your pass because it was just a ball of soap. And the French are just big girls. To put it in, I think their pack, so obviously there are 8 in a pack, their pack total weight was 80 kilos more than our pack, and I weigh 70. So it was like having someone bigger than me as an extra person putting in. So they were some big old girls. That it really suits when you're playing in a really slow, wet game. So yeah, first cap wasn't very special, wasn't memorable. But yeah, I was absolutely bricking it, because under 20s flew through like one of the top players there, and then suddenly you're at the bottom again and you have to work your way back up. And then so we had our autumn internationals in France, and then New Zealand came to us, and I just got capped, didn't play particularly well. So I remember I was at uni at the time, and I didn't check the squad list because I was like, well, there's no way I'm going to get picked. I only got picked because it was like France, so it wasn't really a big thing. And I remember I got a call from a mate like, oh my God, you're playing against the All Blacks. So I then checked the team and got selected for that. But guys, like I say, we had 3 tests, and I played in 2 of them. So I didn't play the first game. And then I remember that game, so I played awful, or not awful, but not great in my first game. And then against New Zealand, so best team in the world, they are technically, because I get told off a lot for saying this, but they did win the last World Cup, so they are ranked number 1. I played great, got a try within 5 minutes, so scored against the All Blacks. I got a try in my second cap. Played really well. Also got my first yellow card in that game, so it was a game of firsts. So it was a complete contrast. And then from that game, so my second cap, I had the respect of the girls, and they were like, oh yeah, well, you play like that in the Prem, why? That's how you should play. And from then on, it was just really learning and training and kind of learning from players in my position. And I mean, it's very fortunate that one of my best mates is Maggie Alfonsi, who you might have heard of, who's all over the media at the moment because she's going to be the next RFU president or something. But like, she was in my position, and she was ranked best flanker in the world. So I spent a lot of time with her to kind of learn what I could from her to see how I could be in her position. And then luckily she got injured for like a year, so I really then spent a lot of time in that 7 shirt and did well. And I remember, like in rugby, lots of injuries happen, so there are always routes in to get there.
Yeah.
Don't injure your teammates, but there are ways in there.
So from your first England cap to sort of getting into the World Cup squad, how long was that? Was that quite a quick journey, or the timelines?
Yeah, so I got capped in November, and then I would say it would be a full year. So I'd done a full year with the elite, where I played in the Six Nations, but again, like you play a game, you start in a game, you come off on the bench for a second game, you miss a game, so it was quite mismatched. They were really playing around with the squad, so the World Cup squad would be the best squad that had some youngsters in it. Really fortunate. We had Canada come over in the autumn internationals that year. I again didn't think I'd get into the World Cup squad because we had a lot of competition. We played really well against Canada, and then got selected. So that World Cup squad probably made me the player I was and gave me the drive. And really, like, we won that World Cup because we were the fittest we've ever been, and there was no team in the world that was fitter than us. So when Pat has a go at you and makes you do all that fitness, trust me, it's worth it, because it's why we beat the other teams. I mean, with that, and Pat cries too when he does fitness.
Well, that's it. I'm glad you said that, because I mean, I've been beasted by you enough times. So I've gone through all the training that the girls are going through. Hannah's done it to me 10 times worse. So thank you, and I paid for it.
Exactly. Yeah, I got mine for free. But yeah, I mean, there was stuff like that we did there. We did training against men, so we would play against university teams and things like that. And I don't know if you know the size of some university men, but they're like, 20 stone blokes that are 6 foot, 6.5 foot. So that really helped toughen you up, because when you then play against Kiwis or you play against the French, they're not as big. So we played, and like I always say to Pat and people that I train, if you train harder than you play, it'll always seem easy. So you can always do well in matches. So I always say, like, especially when you're training, if you work harder than you would have to in a game, life will seem a lot easier. But yeah, we had a really, really good World Cup prep. I was really unfortunate and got a knee injury in the match that selected. So we flew on the Monday, and I wouldn't have been ready. I had about 10 days where I wouldn't have been able to walk, and then I'd have been basically all right to play for a semi-final and final, but I was too risky to take. So I missed out on the World Cup that we won. So I'd done all the hard graft, and then got my side, basically my knee got taken out from the side in that. And that was a real turning point for me, because I was like, I've worked so hard for this World Cup, and then we've gone and won it, and I haven't been there. Yeah. So from then, my performance went from like an average player in the elite to one of the best, and really shot up, because all I wanted to do was go to that next World Cup. So I really trained over that summer, worked really, really hard, and then was completely unrecognisable, and then was a starting 7 from then on, until I had my career-ending injury. But yeah, I mean, that's a huge setback. So every time I got a setback, I just used it to really fuel the fire and go on, because you guys, you're going to get injuries, you're going to get setbacks, you're not going to get selected all the time, but that should make you a better player. That shouldn't make you stop.
Yeah, you talk about setbacks, and it's good that, I mean, we as a coach, we always use, I try to use that analogy. It's not just in rugby, it's in life. So just because you get a setback doesn't mean you have to feel sorry for yourself. You could have easily felt sorry for yourself and think, well, that's it now, I'm giving up. But you used it as your fuel. So that's interesting, to say, well, I want to be at the next World Cup. Okay, circumstances then dictated that you weren't going to go there. I remember that injury, that time you went through, and it was difficult for you. But also, when you were playing for England, I mean, we're still talking, I mean, the game is only just getting into professional now. So you were having to do a day job as well as do the England job and the Saracens job.
Yeah, so like with Saracens, we train Tuesday, Thursday evenings, between 8 till 10, which is really late. I don't stay up that late anymore. And then you'd play on a Sunday. So I was working, so I was either at uni, so I studied at uni, did a sport and exercise science degree, and then went and did a bit of recruitment, but that didn't last long. And then went into like the fitness industry and became a personal trainer and things like that. So I had to work full time whilst also doing England. But for me, like, that was life. So you worked and you played rugby. There wasn't much else. So I wasn't going out drinking and like, that was in your 20s. So that's early 20s. I wasn't going out partying, things like that. Because I was so like, I can do that when I'm retired. Luckily, I retired really early. But yeah, that's just how, with England, we used to call it choices, not sacrifices, because it's not a sacrifice you're making, it's a choice. If you want to get somewhere, that's what you're going to have to do. And you can't afford to go out on a Friday night and play in the Premiership or play an international the next day. It's just not going to happen, or you won't stay at that level.
I like the fact it's a choice. I mean, everything's a choice. So, and you said to yourself as a youngster, so it was embedded in you that you wanted to be an England player. So the choice, I'm guessing, would have been, okay, when you're in your 20s, you want to go out and play and party. But a choice to be an England player and play elite rugby probably came easier to you than other people you might do.
Yeah, definitely. If you look at my uni life compared to a lot of uni athletes, but it's all a choice. And if you're prepared, I think the thing that helped me was the fact that I always saw that I was making these choices, but I was getting somewhere with it. So I was like, well, I'm playing in the Prem now, so it's obviously working. I'm playing for under 20, so I'm playing in the elite, so it's working, and I just stuck with it. And you have off season, there are going to be things that you have injuries, and when you have an injury, you can let your hair down a bit sometimes just to live in your 20s. But yeah, the main thing was, if my goal is to play for England, then that's what I'll do, and that's more important to me than going out and getting smashed or doing something like that. And it's a lot cheaper. So my uni bill was a lot cheaper. So parents on board, it's what you need. Get your kids into sport.
You leave that to the clients that come to you and say, I'm really fat and I eat kebabs and I'm hungover. And you say, come and I'll train you. I'm talking about myself, obviously. So, I mean, I'm just looking. So, from you use your injuries, your setbacks, and you overcome them. And I like to some of the girls to realise that life is you got to the elite level, but you had to work at every single stage. So for the girls to understand at the very start of their journey, it's going to be a tough one. And they can make choices as to how they perceive and where they want their career to go, or their fun rugby time to go. So that I've written down choices. So when you do come to a junior rugby club or you come and play rugby, I believe that you have a choice to do it, and it's your choice. So I think having fun, which I'm sure the girls do, don't you, girls? Oh, what? Sorry, I had to wake them up then.
Just picking their phones.
So you talk about being an old person. You're not really an old person, Hannah. I won't disclose your age, but
28, guys, if you want to know. I look older, but I'm like weathered from being outside a lot. Like Pat.
Yeah, I'm only 25. So retirement came to you because obviously the injuries were too much for you. It was your knee and shoulder, wasn't it? That event, was it in the knee in the end?
Yeah. So I'll talk you. So I'm, by the age of 23, 24, I'd had 8 surgeries, all rugby related. So it's not the perfect sport, but no, I badly broke my leg when I was 15. Had a plate and screws put in. That was from rugby. Had that taken out. I've had both my shoulders done. I think both were caused. One was caused in the Prem. One was caused in the Six Nations, where I just took a bad hit and it basically dislocated my shoulder and popped it back in. But it happened to both my shoulders. And I've had 4 knee ops. That was I have to say, like, with them, I know it sounds like, oh, I've had all these surgeries, but honestly, I was one of those people that if surgery would have been quicker than physio, I would be like, cut me open, let's go.
I thought you just like hospital food.
I actually love anaesthetics, so
Yeah.
I love being put to sleep. Genuinely, it's great. And morphine, but that's a different.
That's another Zoom meeting. That's 8 o'clock. That one.
Oh, okay. Oh, AA Anonymous.
yeah. Morphine Anonymous.
But yeah, so I was pretty much your age when I had my bad break. I was in the England setup at that point. So that was up to, I was out for 6 months, which seems like a really long time in your rugby career with that. But that just kind of cracked on with that. My shoulders were maybe 3 to 6 month injuries, which was awful because my first one meant that I missed going to New Zealand. I had a huge argument with our England doctor saying that I'd rather go to New Zealand than have shoulder surgery, but it was have shoulder surgery and miss New Zealand, but I could go to the World Cup. So that was kind of
it's a choice.
It is a choice. It's like, do you want to go to New Zealand or do you want to go to the World Cup? Apparently both isn't an option.
Not for you. Not your like.
Fuming. But yeah, so my big injury was my knee. So that was when I was 23. So 23, I was at the prime. I was at England camp. I was meant to be starting the next weekend against Scotland in the Six Nations. And it was just a training game. So it was just the England squad. We were playing against each other. I was stood at the back of the line out, not doing very much, caught the ball, got my foot caught in the ground and just twisted. And my foot stayed where it was and my knee popped. So my ACL was absolutely shot. I just went to the floor and cried, which seems really dramatic. And it is quite painful. But it's one of those injuries that, I don't know if you've ever heard of symptoms of an ACL, it's excruciating pain and it stops. And I had huge pain in my knee, heard a pop. It felt like pins and needles tingle, and then it felt fine. So I started crying because I was like, I have done my ACL. And if anyone knows what an ACL is, it means you're out for a minimum of 9 months straight away. So that's 9 months done. So I was absolutely distraught, like, oh my God, like, I can't play in the Six Nations. Our World Cup's next year. It's in just over a year. I'm not going to be able to make it. And then I did the standard, what I did, and this is like one of the biggest things I can say to you guys, is sometimes patience. You should be patient with injuries. You have to be patient with injuries, because I rushed in the surgeon that I wanted. Luckily I had private healthcare. So the surgeon I wanted was away on holiday. So I had to wait 2 weeks. So I was like, absolutely not, I'll have someone else. He did my surgery. Wasn't particularly fond of him. He used a different graft that I would have gone for. This is all medical talk, so don't worry too much about this. But basically I rushed back, but in that time rushing back, I was so focused to get to the autumn internationals. So I was like, what's the quickest we've ever got someone back from an ACL in the England squad? And it was, I think, 9 months. So I was like, right, I'll get back in 8.5. And I was flying through my recovery. I was doing really well. I was actually the best I'd ever moved. It was the quickest I'd ever been. It was the fittest I'd ever been. My skills were better because I'd really spent time working on them. And then they were like, yeah, you're pretty much good to go. Like, autumn internationals coming up. I was with my S&C coach, so similar stuff that I do with Pat, just mucking around. I stepped her. As I stepped, my knee went. And then I just remember I went to the floor and it didn't feel the same, but I was like, it's gone. So everyone thought I was being a drama queen, because I was like, I didn't even cry this time. I was just total disbelief. I managed to persuade them that it probably was serious. Had a scan, ruptured my ACL again, took out my meniscus. You then add on 2 years. So I was gone from having a 9-month injury to a 3-year injury. In that time, I had another 3 knee ops because there was just so much damage in there. To which point I was getting back and spoke to the physios and the surgeons, and they were just like, you need to call it, because you won't have any career left, or if you play, if that knee doesn't go, your other knee will go, and then you're ruined. And I wouldn't then have a quality of life. I love training, so I then wouldn't be able to train, wouldn't be able to chase after my dog when she runs off, wouldn't be able to chase after my children. So I made the really hard decision to call it on my career there. And
So,
at the age of, I was 24 then. So at the age of 24, I was planning on playing till I was about 35. So all I was thinking was I had all of these goals to do and achieve, and it was suddenly wiped out of my feet. And that took a lot of getting used to. And that was like probably the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with, was being like, all I want to do is get to this World Cup or the next World Cup. And then someone being like, you're done, you'll never play again. So yeah, that sucked.
So for 19 years, effectively, your life had been building up to something. So again, I'll use the word choice. At this point, the choice was taken away from you. So it's left even a void. So I'm glad you talked about the injury, because, you know, and having the injuries, because rugby is a physical game. And unless you get your fitness and your technique, you play hard and it happens. But again, you know, the way you played, and I've seen you, Hannah, and I've seen you play, and so yeah, you're a tough cookie, and I'm glad I didn't have to, you know, get anywhere near you, or I'm glad I watched. Let's put it that way. So mentally, you had a new focus, a new challenge at that age. So, you know, I'm still a baby. I'm 24 years old. What was your new challenge?
So I mean, luckily, because I'm one of those people that's like all or nothing, so I knew I still wanted to be fit. So I spent a lot of time just making sure my knee would be right. So I still trained and did that. But it was, for me, the whole issue was like, you find a new identity. Like, I'd always been an England rugby player. That's all I'd ever worked for. So that's what you're known as. So it was kind of transitioning across. So I was a personal trainer. So I went freelance, set up my own business. So that was really time consuming. So that was great, because I had put all my effort that I would have put into being a rugby player and playing for England to making a business. So my business went really well with that. I also now work for a company called LAPS, which is Life After Professional Sport. So with that, I work with current or ex-professional athletes that are transitioning into careers after. So I use my experience into helping them. So I work with Olympic athletes, like Premier League footballers, things like that are transitioning across, because it's really difficult if all you've ever worked for is being at the top of your game, and you've been at the top and you've had those highs and you've done all of that, and then suddenly it's taken away from you. Because like with sport, I think only 15% of us pick when we retire. The rest is picked for you. So you retire because you're not selected anymore, so you're dropped from your squad, or because you're injured or something like that. So yeah, it's difficult, and I'm 28 now, so it probably took me 3 years to get over it. So I was a nightmare for the first couple.
I remember.
But now I'm great.
Yeah,
I'm totally over it.
Yeah. Okay. So if you were to have your go again in rugby life, is there anything you'd do differently?
Your question or someone else's? Because it's a really good question.
This is your question.
Is it? This is my question. Great question.
You question yourself. Question yourself, Hannah. No, it's a joint. It did come out. It has been brought out on several occasions. So
yeah, I think the biggest. I was very driven, so I love that. But I'd always say one thing for you guys, and a quote that I got when I got the first game I played for under 20s. There was a quote above my shirt, and it was, "I'm not telling you it's going to be easy. I'm telling you it's going to be worth it." And that was like the biggest thing I ever thought. Because whenever you're doing something, nothing in life is going to be easy if it's worth doing. But if you put in the graft, it's worth it. And all those horrible fitness sessions, like those sessions in the cold and the wet when you're moaning, and I moaned, I'm a proper princess, but not as much as you, Pat, but I was a princess. But that was totally worth it. And I think the biggest thing for me was, you don't realise when you're young that you think you're invincible, and you pretty much are. But injury-wise, if I'd have taken better care of my body and had more rest days and foam rolled more and really listened to the physios when they were like, you need to work on this, you need to work on this, you need more flexibility here, I'd probably still be playing. because I had weaknesses from when I broke my leg, so that my ankle was really stiff. So by having that, it meant I didn't have much range in my ankle. So when I twisted my knee, if my ankle had been mobile, my ankle would have gone with it, but it didn't. So my knee had to give the whole rotation. So simple things like that would have saved my rugby career. But you just don't think about it. You don't think it will happen to you. So I think yeah.
Well, effectively, what you're saying is that people who are older than you that had more knowledge and understood were correct, and just because you were young, you thought you knew everything, and you didn't. So
I didn't know. My physios, I admitted to my physios that they were right. So they said I was really mature. By the time I'd retired, they were like, "Oh, you're learning."
Well, your body's mature, your brain wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I've got a question that's just come in from Naya. Naya, give us a wave. Little Naya, there you go. She's very shy, bless her. I'll say. Why did you choose rugby over other sports like football and netball, etc.?
I have to say, I think rugby kind of picked me. It was just one of those things that I was good at and I could really see myself going far in. And I like netball. I played county netball, so I was decent at it. But it was one of those, I could never really see myself. If you said pick one, it would have been rugby. If you can only play one sport, there would have been absolutely no doubt in my mind that that's what I would have gone for. It was just having, that was almost always going to be my sport. And if I was injured, all I wanted to do was get back on that rugby pitch. And even now, if I'm on a rugby pitch, I get excited. I want to play, but my knee just doesn't let me.
No. So I've got a few questions. So that's a good answer. So yeah, the choice was there. It's in the stars, really, wasn't it? You don't realise it.
I'm intrigued about these questions, by the way.
I told you I wasn't. None of the girls aren't going to trip you up. Katie asked a question. Katie, give us a wave. Katie in the pink hat. There you go. What do you think your best rugby skill is?
Seeing the ball. So I was a jackler. So if anyone doesn't know what that means, it means if someone's on the floor, I would be the first person in that ruck with my hands on the ball. And that was like my go-to. I remember my England coach once was like, "You only made 5 tackles in this international game or whatever." And I was like, "Yeah, but I got 10 turnovers." And he just was like, "That's fair enough." Yeah, 10, my turnover count was so high. And I remember playing in the Prem, and it was just what I was known for. And people absolutely hated, because I used to just wait for someone to make a big tackle and I would just come in behind them and steal. So it's just how I read the game. So that would definitely be my go-to. That's what got me as far as I could get.
Well, yeah. I'm just going through the list of questions here from the girls. So you have covered quite a lot. I suppose this is another one from Katie. And it goes, I think we may have covered it earlier, but you talked about making mistakes and mess up. And yeah, everyone makes mistakes. But did you ever consider quitting?
I had to be pushed out of rugby by medical people. There was never, even having a bad game, it sucks, but there was never a mistake as a mistake. And I think the biggest thing actually in rugby, which girls are so much better at than boys. Sorry, Joseph, before you're there, but is taking ownership. So if someone passed me a ball and I dropped it, I'd be like, "Oh, sorry, I dropped that." But a lot of people, if they drop it, it's like, "Oh, your pass was rubbish," and they try and pass on blame. So I always think taking ownership is, if you've done something wrong, if you miss a tackle, just be like, "Oh, sorry, my bad. I'll learn from that." But all of it, it's after a game. Obviously, there are always positives, and you do think about the positives. I wouldn't come off a game that I had an amazing game and not look at anything I did well. I would still be like, "Oh yeah, scored a try or made a really big tackle." But I just think looking at the errors or what makes you a better player, and there should never be the option of I want to quit, because there's no need. It's an awesome game. If I could play it, I still would. Trust me.
I know. Maybe you'd have less energy to beast me.
Oh, I'd have so much less energy.
Yeah.
I'm tired doing this. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to go back to the question to when the girls played against the boys. Was that pre-World Cup? And you talk about size difference. And I know, you know, whenever you look at, when you go on the rugby pitch and you look at someone opposite you and think they're huge. So if it's boys v girls, obviously you're going to get physicality. Now, something I've always noticed that, especially women's sport is far more technical and it's better and more precise. Did you win the game actually against the boys?
We didn't keep score. But we wouldn't have won, honestly. Like, they were a good level. They were a good high level. But
it was good competition. You didn't feel.
Yeah, you learn so much from it. I mean, you can't compare men and women's rugby.
No.
Like when people say, "Oh, well, men's rugby is better," it's a completely different game.
Yeah.
Because a man can kick the ball 100 meters down the pitch, a woman can't, which means we have to be more skillful. I learned from it is that, right, for example, if you're tackling someone bigger than you, I just would always look at their knees, because everyone's got little knees. I remember lining up against, when we were going out the tunnel at Twickenham, against the All Blacks. And I remember the winger, so one of the light ones, was bigger than me. I was like, dear God, this winger is bigger than me, and I'm one of the forwards. So these girls are going to be big. But you just deal with it. And if you're technically good, if you can tackle, if you've got good form, like when we scrummaged, for example, against France, and they're big girls, they're a lot bigger than us, our technique held it. So our scrum was always absolutely fine, and we were more mobile, so we would be able to get around the pitch. So we always had those assets. So size-wise, playing against men was awesome because they're also quicker than us. So I think it just really just helped. Like, it'd be like playing against like the best of the women out there. So that really that helped with that. And line-outs, when you're doing a line-out against someone that's 6'8", and you guys, the tallest one's probably 5'11".
There's 3 of you.
Oh, honestly, that was hard. But yeah, that helped.
The reason I ask that is because at a young age, when the girls are just, say, starting out in the game, and there is that little bit of a fear factor and a confidence thing. But technique will see you through. So I'm glad that's why I raised it. It's physicality.
A big tip, girls, is the really big girls you play against are so much easier to tackle, because big people are slower, they're less agile. So the little ones are the ones that are absolutely awful to tackle, because they step you get a high tackle in, like the agility's harder, they're really quick. So I would always find, like, if a big girl was running at me, I'd be like, I'm just going to go low. If you tackle low, they will go straight down. So yeah, if your technique's good, then if there's a big girl, don't worry, I'd be like, I'd aim for the big one. I was like, I'd rather do that than get stuck on the wing with someone that's going to run right round me or make me look stupid and step me. So 100% don't worry about size.
Okay, so we're coming in the last few minutes now, Hannah. Is there anything for the girls? I know we've covered quite a lot of things here. Any final words you'd like to say to them?
The big thing is just enjoy it. It is an awesome game, and if, like I said, I've said a million times, boring you now, if I could still play, I would. And the friendships you build from it are awesome. But if you want to go further, like, they're a really clear path. And if you don't make it, then there's always another go. But enjoy your club. That's where the bread and butter is. That's where the fun is. That's where you learn everything. And if you can then individually work your way up into county, into divisional and things like that, by all means do it, because it will make you a better player. And if you're a better player, it will raise the standard of your team, because everyone will want to work with you and kind of be as good as you, and that will help. So I think, like, be great friends. It's going to be awesome as you get older, because the team only gets better and stronger as you get older, and learn more. But your path will just go up. Your skills and fitness will all just shoot up, because as you get higher, so even I started off obviously really young, but so I just basically started to steady off, whereas you guys will be shooting up. But there are girls that, like I said, started and that played for England and started playing rugby at university. So you're 5 years ahead of them. So if you want to make it, or if you just want to play for fun, it's up to you. It's your choice. But 100% enjoy it, because if I could still play, I would. Just try not to wreck your bodies, but it's not all.
Well, let's just hope one day, you know, in the not too distant future, one of the girls comes through on a piece of paper and says, you know, an old grammarian unicorn, then she's going to get into my side. So I'd like to say yes. I'd like to be sending a few of them your way one day, but it's up to them if they want that choice. When they're going to make that choice. So I'll leave it there now, Hannah. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much to my unicorns and the audience in tonight. It's been a wonderful evening. We're here all week. Joseph is now thinking he's going to become a unicorn. Excellent. So thanks very much, Hannah. All the best.
Good luck with your season whenever it starts or finishes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Whichever one it is.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. Take it easy.
Guys, have a lovely one, guys.
Cheers, mate.